Hi everyone, Jay Adams here from Denver Water along with Darren Davidson from CSU Extension, and we're here today to talk about winter watering. Darren, a lot of people may forget about their plants and their trees in the winter months. When is a good time to water your plants and trees?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's easy to forget. Whenever we have had a long period, say a month, 6 weeks, of no measurable moisture where that snow can really melt and infiltrate into the soil, you want to start thinking about winter watering.
Yeah, so when it's dry, get your brain thinking.
Yep.
Okay. What about those little 2 to 3 inch snowstorms that we get in the winter? Do they help much?
Yeah, they help a little bit, but probably less than people think. When we get sort of that skiff of snow or just a few inches, oftentimes that snow will evaporate or actually blow away before it can melt and soak into the ground, especially if the ground is frozen. That moisture isn't making it in.
And I didn't really realize this, but without water, there can be some damage, right? What can happen to the plants and trees if they don't get enough water?
Yeah, one of the biggest issues is winter desiccation. So basically just drying out. So with evergreens, you'll start to see things like needles browning. With shrubs, you might see some dieback. And in really severe cases, plants can actually die from not getting enough moisture over the winter.
So there's a number of things we need to think about too, right? When we're going to water, what are those factors?
That's right. Some things you want to keep in mind are only water when the daytime temperature is going to be 40 degrees or higher. And you're going to want to water kind of in the middle of the day when that temperature has gotten to its peak, and early enough in the day that the water has a chance to infiltrate into the soil before temperatures start to drop again.
Got it. And so the ground can't be frozen either, right?
Correct. Yep, you got it.
Okay. Let's start talking about trees. How much water do trees need?
Well, there's a rule of thumb that we recommend, and that is to water established trees 10 gallons for every 1 inch diameter that the tree is.
Okay, so next question, how often should you water both the newly planted trees and the more established ones?
More established trees, once a month is what we recommend, again, if we haven't had any good precipitation. And then trees that have only been in the ground for a year or two, you're going to want to water those every 2, maybe 3 weeks during really dry spells.
Let's talk about the drip line. The importance of, first, what is the drip line and why is that important for when you water?
Great question. So glad you asked. So the drip line on a mature established tree is at the outer edge of where the branches are or where the leaves are during the summer. That's where the most active roots are. And so that's where they can really absorb water best. A lot of people think they need to be watering right up against the trunk, but that's not actually the best thing for the tree. So when you do apply that water, you want to do it out at the drip line. That's for established trees. For new trees, those roots, like I said, they haven't extended out yet. And so you are going to be watering more at the base of the trunk and around where that root ball is.
Okay, and that leads us into our next question. How do I put that water on the tree? What are some really easy, common methods to water the tree?
Right. So again, we're wanting a nice deep soak. We're watering about the top 18 inches of soil because that's where the really active roots are going to be. And you want it applied pretty slowly. So you don't want any runoff. So a hose at a slow trickle, a soaker hose, or a hose end sprinkler, those are all going to be really good ways to distribute and apply that water. But again, slow and steady.
And talk about different types of trees. Some of them need a little more attention than others, right?
Right. So evergreens, things that don't lose their needles or their leaves, they're going to need more water and more attention. And then those newly planted trees too.
The location of where a tree is in your yard also impacts how much water it needs too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So you want to pay attention to wind and sun exposure. So if your property is in a really particularly windy area, or if your trees in the has southern exposure, you'll definitely want to make sure you're getting extra water down.
So let's move on to plants now. How much water do plants need?
Yeah, so if we're talking about shrubs, you've got big shrubs and small shrubs, but again, a rule of thumb is about 5 gallons per shrub. But if you have a really tiny shrub, then maybe you're going to put, 1 or 2 gallons down at a time.
And there's also new established plants versus the ones you just put in the ground, right?
Right. So again, an established plant that has a good, strong root system, we're going to be looking at watering those about once a month, maybe 6 weeks. And then those newer shrubs, you're going to want to check them every couple of weeks.
And it's important you can kind of build a little, call it a moat around them.
Yep, you can build a moat or a basin with that mulch. That's going to allow you to pour some of that water in, and it'll sort of hold it in, let it infiltrate, soak into the soil, and then continue to pour on.
Got it. Okay. And so many of our plants these days are water-wise, xeric. They're designed for this, but do they still need some water?
Yeah, most of our natives and xerics, it's in the name, xeric means dry, but even they can really benefit from extra water, especially during extended periods of warm, dry weather in the winter.
Okay. And last but not least, our Kentucky bluegrass. We have a lot of that out here in Colorado. Should we be watering our grass in the winter?
So not as critical as our trees and some of our shrubs, but it can definitely benefit from some extra water. It'll help it kind of rebound and green up in the spring if it's gotten a little extra water. If you have Kentucky bluegrass under trees in that root zone, it's going to get that supplemental water. And one of the biggest things is if you give your lawn some extra water, you might be able to fend off turf mites because they love a warm, dry winter.
Turf mites. I think a lot of people didn't know that, but they can really cause some harm.
They really can do a lot of damage, and we see them most often after these warm, dry winters.
So Darren, there's two big don'ts that we want to think about for winter watering. What are those?
That's right. So don't forget to disconnect your hose from the spigot. You want to turn off the water, disconnect the hose to prevent any pipes freezing and any damage there. And then don't turn on your in-ground sprinkler system. You don't want to mess with that until at least mid-May or later.
Great tips. For a lot of people not familiar with CSU Extension, tell us a little bit about what they can get from CSU.
Yeah, so if people visit our website, we have tons of resources, not just on horticulture and gardening things, but all kinds of topics. You'll find fact sheets and videos and resources. Also, CSU Extension serves all 64 counties of Colorado. We have offices in 55 of those counties, so anybody can reach out to their local county extension office for more information.
All right, thanks so much, Darren. Great tips. And remember, you can get more landscaping tips at denverwater.org/conserve.